What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emanuele Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets.
What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here as always with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuele Pani. Today, I am super excited. You've heard us talk a lot over the years about how to upgrade your self-image and how that's made the biggest difference in my life and in E's life. Well, today you're in for a treat because we have our mindset coach, Dave Conway, on this episode. Again, this is somebody that has completely changed my life. He's been working with E for a while now as well. And we really dive deep on context of the self-image, how to upgrade it, how to handle fear, a whole bunch of things that will really help you upgrade your life. And so if you're at that place right now where you're struggling or you're feeling stuck, or maybe you're just getting started, this is one that you're going to want to listen to. So
yeah, definitely listen to it a couple of times and really listen to it from a place of genuinely being open-minded, curious, and really understand that the more you study yourself and the more you study these concepts and this material and these things that we talk about, the more of an impact it's going to have on your life. And it takes repetition, but it takes repetition for you guys to master, for us to master anything in life, right? So look at it from that perspective. Again, it's an honor for us to have him on. He has changed our lives and the life of many members in our mastermind as well. And so, yeah, let's roll into it.
All right, what's up, STR Nation? Welcome back to a very special episode. We have a good friend and a insanely amazing mentor of mine, Mr. Dave Conway, on the show with us today. Dave, thank you for being here, man.
Awesome. It's beautiful to be here. Nice seeing you both.
Yeah, so for context for listeners out there, I've been working with Dave a little over 4 years now. And, you know, I met Dave through a mutual friend of the three of us, actually, I had just quit my job. For context, I was out full time. COVID had just hit. I'm running all these properties. I'm getting real tight around money, trying to figure out how I'm going to make it through COVID and be very diligent. And she's like, you got to meet this guy. And I'm like, listen, I'm in 2 other masterminds right now. I'm trying to manage cash flow. I know he's going to have some coaching program he's going to want to sell me. Like, I don't need another mastermind. And she's like, just shut up and meet the guy. So I said, okay, fine, I'll meet him. And I will never forget the first 4 seconds we got on that Zoom meeting. You looked me dead in the eye and you said, tell me what you want and I'll show you exactly how to get it. And I remember thinking, who the F is this guy? Like, really, right? But by the end of that conversation, my intuition was telling me, this is something that you really need to pursue. There's something different about this guy. And 4 years later, my life has completely changed. And we'll talk about some ideas today that you helped ingrain in me that really opened up possibilities and started to change my self-image, how I saw myself, what I thought was possible for myself. And within 12 months, I think we said it was to the day when you pulled up our text messages at our boardroom event, like 12 months to the day, you helped me turn my annual income into my monthly income, which is insane. Like, that's absolutely insane, right? And when people hear that, they think, oh, that's BS or that's not possible. Well, listen up. This will be a fun episode and maybe it'll increase some awarenesses for you. So
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. But why don't we go back to your beginning, because you have a pretty normal past and then you had some events that changed your life.
Yeah. So my whole entire life, and thanks for having me as well. This is going to be a spectacular call. We're going to talk today about turning our annual income into our monthly income and some serious blockers that stop us from getting what we want in life. And we're going to start to share and help people understand that it's all mental. It's all mental. Life is just a mental game. Success is a mental game, and money is a mental game as well. Yeah, so my whole life, I've always known that there was something else to life other than we see. I never really saw in colors or anything like that. I'm not like, I don't like have like visions or anything, but I always had an intuition where I could pick up people's energy. And I remember the first time that I heard the term a woman's intuition, I was like, hey, I think I've got one of those. I think I've got a woman's intuition. Anyway, so when I was turned 18, my mom brought me to see this gentleman speak, and it was for 2 hours. It was the first, last, and only time this person was ever in our town. So even the fact that I was there is like, serendipity. Now I know it's the law of attraction, but truly spectacular. And this man spoke for a couple hours, and I will tell you, I'd never heard anybody talk like that. It's like every time that he opened his mouth, just like a pearl of wisdom dropped out. And I actually, to a degree, was understanding what he was saying. Life began to make sense for me. Prior to that, I really did struggle trying to make sense of life. I knew there was more, and I don't think I'm the only person that feels this way. But as this man spoke, things started to make sense. And that gentleman's name was Bob Proctor. Now, that day didn't change my life, but what it did do is it changed the direction of my life. So I started to get really, really hungry and interested and curious into things like spiritual sciences, why we do what we do, why we don't do a lot of things that we really would like to do, and what really does produce success in a person's life. Well, that journey for me went on for 15 years, and I never produced success. So I spent 15 years like studying and in personal development and the whole thing, no success. Now, if you have a person that's been trying to build success in their life for 15 years and hasn't been able to do it, I'll tell you, you're going to find a pretty miserable, angry, frustrated human being, and that's what I'd become. You see, I missed the memo on a couple key ideas around our belief system and our paradigms, our mental conditioning. And I also missed the memo on a thing called the self image. And the self image is how we see ourselves, and it controls our perception, controls our perception of the whole thing. So in 2015, I started to really have this feeling that I was destined for something greater. Now, since then, I've learned that we all feel this way. I'm not unique in this. But for some reason, for me, it got really loud. And that drum was playing for over 2 years. Like, there's something more for you. You should be doing better. Your life should be different. You have more in you than what you're producing. And I lived like that for the next 2 years. And then this idea floated in my mind. So, you know what? I wonder if Bob Proctor's still doing his thing. So I went online and I Googled him, and he was hosting an event in Los Angeles, California. I'm up in Canada, and called the Paradigm Shift. So I bought a couple tickets. My wife and I went down, and I will tell you, that was the most painful weekend of my entire life. My life has never been the same since then. My consciousness, my awareness started to change so fast after that event. I ended up hiring him at that event. I actually ended up buying a license to start to facilitate his program. I became PGI consultant. I think over 3,000 people as that program went on ended up becoming consultants. But within my first year, I became the top selling consultant in the world, and my life started to change really, really fast. All mental.
So you go from, and I know your backstory. So for context, you were in construction for a long time, right? So you were getting your hands dirty. You had no problem working hard. You were working hard,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And insane weather up there in Canada. I don't know why anybody still lives there, but you were out there in ridiculous temperatures, swinging hammers and de-thawing your power tools with just ridiculous, right?
Didn't you build a box so you could have two sets of tools, one that stayed warm and then one that you use get cold and then you would switch them? Was that what you told us one time?
Yeah, I say
You
it's so
built
damn.
yourself like a little oven for the
Yeah, I built a
tools to
little
like
oven for my
defrost it?
tools. Yeah, so they defrost. It's it's so cold up here in the winter that the cold doesn't just freeze your hands; it also freezes your soul.
Mm. So the my point was, it wasn't a problem of being lazy, right? I think a lot of people, they're like, oh, that person's just lazy. That's why they're not getting ahead. You got to work hard to make the kind of money you want. That's not the equation. That's not the formula. And so you start working for Bob, or start as this PGI consultant, become number one in the world. What happens from there?
So, what happened to change it? And I call this my freedom formula. You know, I've started to learn that what we're all after is freedom. A lot of people start with the pursuit of financial freedom. which I'm not convinced is actually real. I think freedom is purely mental. And as I started to journey, I started to realize that we're all after freedom. Well, there's a freedom formula behind it. And I never did this consciously. I just kind of fell into it. So in order for a person to become free, here's the formula. Number one, you have to get an elite mindset coach. Like, honestly, if you do not have an elite mindset coach that truly understands the mind, truly understands paradigms, truly understands how to change a belief system and how to make decisions, like, you're really and truly, in my opinion, you're wasting time. Therefore, you're wasting your life. The second is systematic study. Systematic study. So what changed for me between 2017 and 2018, and since then as well, is I began to study in a systematic way. Repetition of thought is the mother of all learning. Repetition of thought is the only way to start to change how we think, our mindset. So you got to get into studying powerful information, studying yourself, and then studying yourself compared to that information. And then the third is you have to change the environments in which you live. So one of the ways you can do this is you can get to either elite level mastermind groups, like for sure, but also start to get an edge on your current reality. Start to do upgrades at hotels. Start to do upgrades on flights. Start to tip a little more restaurants. Start going to nicer restaurants. Like, you have to start to alter your environment, because what I found is that the number one thing that stops most of us, number one, from starting to have a quantum leap and change in our results, stopping us from this, or gets us along the way, is always our environment. It's the environment that's going to screw you. So it's your environment that's going to help you, and it's your environment that's going to screw you. So as I started to break free from my old life, and just to put in perspective or context, like, I was earning $60,000 a year as a carpenter, $5,000 a month. And within 31 months, my income, I took it over 100 grand, and it never stopped there. With this freedom formula, I ended up taking it over 200, then 300, over $500,000. And since that day, my biggest month has been $980,000 in a single month. I have earned more now in many, multiple times more in 1 hour than I used to earn in an entire year. And I truly do believe that if a person has the right direction, the right information, the right attitude, that person can change their life within a 18-month period, radically change the whole thing.
Yeah, and I was an example of that, right? And I don't say that to brag, but I was skeptical at the beginning too. But if you really think about it, you said, number one, people should have an elite mindset coach. And if you think about it, if you look at the most elite athletes on the planet, yes, they have physical coaches and trainers. The top people have mindset coaches in any field, So why do you think you'd be such a unique and special snowflake that you could achieve massive change and massive success without that?
Well, I had this, I used to do the CrossFit, and I had this trainer that she was a CrossFit competitor. She would go to the games, the actual, like, the finals. And she'd been going, I think she went like 5 or 7 years and was never able to win. And I ended up coaching her. Within the first 6 months, we got her the silver. 12 months later, so 18 months from when we started, we got her the gold. Now, what she was missing the whole time was a mindset coach. So she had an amazing trainer. This guy trained Olympic athletes. He was a beast. Like, you do not want me training you in physical fitness. But what she was missing was the mindset coach. Once she started to introduce some of these concepts that have changed my life and countless clients' lives, and your life as well, Mike, and Emanuele's. Once we started to introduce certain ideas to her and started helping her understand how her mind actually functions, the gold medal was just, and then she won a gold the next year after, so all that time, that's what I'm saying. If you don't have an elite level mindset coach, you really are wasting time, therefore a life.
One of the things that I started doing inside of our mastermind was, I do 1 call a week, and we have 8 other coaches that coach on different topics. My coaching call now is purely on mindset, to get people's heads right, work on their self-image, do all these things. Since we've implemented that over the last couple of years, the results have been ridiculous. Like, and for context, right? I think they've added I was looking at it this morning, like almost 2,900 listings, like globally. And this is a smaller mastermind. I'm not talking about having thousands of people. This is a high level mastermind. And the average time it takes to get a deal is 41 days for somebody that's brand new. Now, before that, it could take 3 to 6 months, because the hardest part at the beginning is creating the belief that you can actually do something. Once they'd get their first deal, then it'd be rocket fuel. So how do you excel that first deal? It's all in your head. It's all in your self-image, and it's the belief that you can do certain things or what you perceive as possible. When I first met you, I told you my goal was to turn my, annual into my monthly income. And I did not think that was possible because I didn't know anybody that was doing that. That was outside of my environment. Now that's par for the course in the mastermind for you. Like, I know a bunch of people doing that now. When you get around people that are achieving the results that you want, it starts to normalize it. And they're like, oh, this is possible. Sue and Timmy just did this, or what? Like, wow, this is actually normal. This isn't as big of a deal.
Yeah, and they're not even, and Sue and Timmy aren't even that smart. And they did
Exactly.
it, so hey, maybe I could do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been cutting you off the whole show. So
No, it's
I'll
fine
shut up.
because anyways, it's going where I've been meaning to go. And the thing that I wanted to touch on, because it's been the biggest thing for work for myself, it's been the environment. And anytime I think about, like, we had a coaching call the other day, and you asked what was one of the more meaningful things that you've realized since you've been doing coaching with me. And one of those things that I keep telling every time that you ask a question is the idea of your environment. And you gave us this example of if you put an actual sponge inside a swimming pool, and the sponge says, I don't want to absorb any of the chlorine that is in this pool, it's not possible, right? If you're in the pool, you're going to absorb the chlorine. And for me, the biggest growth and the biggest pain in the last 1.5 to 2 years has been my environment and my unwillingness to change my environment. And one of the side effects that has happened for me being unwilling to change my environment is that I had become undecisive. And what happens in my mind to a high achieving person when they become undecisive is that they start to rot on the inside out, because you start feeling depressed, you start feeling stuck, you start feeling all this kind of emotions, and all of it is your environment. So to me, it's so fascinating that the environment is important in terms of like where you want to go. So putting yourself in environments that make you think, dream bigger, but it's also just as important for you to get out of environments that don't serve you, right? So would you say if somebody is listening to this now and they're like, okay, so should I work on my inner speech first and my image of myself first, or should I work on my environment first? Which one would you say they should focus on first?
I think the inner world first. So if we're going to start to make changes in our life, and it takes courage to make it change, if we're going to start to make changes in our life, we're going to need to have something worth changing for. And this is why goals and our big goals are so important to us, because if we're going to change our life, we need to give up our current life to embody the new life. Well, we better really want that new life. So when I started this journey, like I would say officially, like with some proper direction, in 2017, I really didn't want my life anymore. Now, I wasn't suicidal or anything like that, but I was done. Like, I'd been trying for 15 years to try and make a change, been trying to create success in my life. And if you looked out at my life, I may as well have not even started. It was like there was no success in the damn thing. So I was ready to let it go. I was unhappy, I was unhealthy, and I was definitely unwealthy. And it was a total wholesale of it. So I was willing to let go of the whole thing. And I did. And I did. And I got an amazing mentor in Bob Proctor. And he started to just tell me what to do and started to tell me how to think. And he started to tell me what to believe. And I just followed him. I just got rid of Dave Conway and I just started to absorb a new philosophy. I think when we are hiring a mentor, I think there's a little education that I'd like to give your audience. You see, everybody's after ideas. And the big mistake that we make as people, and it's the cause of all of our problems, it's selfishness. So we want to use ideas. So there's probably some people listening to this podcast today and they want to like listen because they think they're going to get some ideas that they can go out and use. But what we want to grasp is that you want to let the ideas use you, because ideas use you. You don't use ideas, they use you, because whatever idea you accept, that's the one that starts to go out into the world. So as we start to understand this, you can start to alter your belief system very quick. So when you hire a mentor, you're not just after their ideas. Now, they will give you ideas, because what is mentorship? Mentorship is two things. It's the transference of ideas, and then it's the transference of belief. And that's also why the masterminds are important, because when you start seeing Timmy and Lucy start having quantum leaps or start achieving things that you desire to achieve, what that's going to do is that's going to give you courage. That's going to give you confidence. But you're not just after mentors' ideas. What you're after is their belief. That's really why you want to hire a mentor, because you want to acquire their belief. This is why YouTube doesn't work. And it never will, because everyone's on there trying to get ideas, but start to observe the person. What's the belief system behind that individual that's actually sharing that idea? Because your intellect will gather information, but your subconscious mind is where your belief system, and you can have all the knowledge in the world. That does not mean that you believe. That does not mean. Beliefs are the most common thing in the world, but actual belief is one of the rarest. And if you're not careful, every human being, all people do all day long is they walk around on this earth and they share their ideas and their beliefs with you. And if you're not careful, everybody will become your mentor. Like my mother-in-law, her mentor is Anderson Cooper. Whatever he says and whatever he believes, that's what she believes. It's amazing.
I want to add some context to this too, real quick, because a lot of people talk about mindset and the power of the mindset, but they don't really give any context to it. So I'll give an example, right? So once Dave helped me start to create some belief that I could drastically increase my income. Once that belief finally set in, all of a sudden, all these opportunities started coming up, and I started adding more clients on, the property side of the house, on the coaching side of the house. All of a sudden, my income starts going way up, right? Everything starts going. I'm gaining momentum. Things are going great. Then all of a sudden, your subconscious kicks in, or mine does. And after you start to get some wins, all of a sudden, this massive wave of fear comes in, and it says, hey, can you handle this? Can you handle all these properties? Can you handle all these clients? Can you sustain this? Right? You call it the terror barrier. And I've watched hundreds of students go through this process now where they start to really gain traction. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And if you don't upgrade your self-image and you don't have a mindset coach to navigate you through that, this is where people stop and retreat back into their old life, because it's terrifying, right? It's like people that win the lottery. Now they have all this money and 95% of them end up broke again because they don't know how to handle it. It's the same thing when you start to win big in business. Can you handle it? Have you upgraded your self-image to be like, yes, I can handle this. Yes, I can move forward. I've got this. Here's where I'm going. And I shed that old version of me that would have thought that this is a big deal and this is just normal now. And I've been through it. Every time I go to a new level, that thing starts to creep up. But now, 4 years later, I'm able to recognize it right away and get out of that. But you told me something a long time ago, that you asked Bob a question. You said, have you ever seen a person change on their own? And what did he say to you?
He said no. At that time, he'd been working in the mindset space and personal development space for 55 years. And if the audience doesn't know who we're talking about when we say Bob, we're talking about Bob Proctor, who I believe is, I call him the OG, the original gangsta of personal development. And he was the man, I'm telling you. But people don't really fully understand what he was saying. He made it simple, but it was actually very deep. And he said, no, he said, in 55 years, I've never met a single person that's been able to do it on their own. If when I think back about my own life, the only time my life's ever changed is when someone's helped me. When I realized that something in my life was unacceptable, I didn't want it in my life anymore, and I reached out for help, and people always come to help me. Every change I've ever experienced, someone has helped me make that change every time. And one of the scariest things that a person will experience is when you actually get what you want. When you start to actually get what you want, is terrifying. I remember this one client of mine, his goal was to bring his company to 13 million a year. Young guy, young man. I think he was like 27 at the time. And I was coaching him, and the time came, he had a construction company, and the time came when he had to start signing like $10 million bonds. Well, that's just how it goes. Like, if you're going to do that scale, you have to sign these bonds. You have to insure the project. And I remember he called me just absolutely terrified. And I said, exactly. Once you start to get what you want, once you attract in what you want, you will find that once you have to physically do it, that's when fear really starts to, and terror for some people. And it can be crippling. It can cause significant anxiety. And a lot of people never make it through. They never make it through.
And to me, this is where the power of a mentor that understands this really comes into play. Because I was one of those people. I got hospitalized 4 times in a year. And I remember calling you. I was having anxiety attacks, and I didn't know what the hell was going on. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was dying. And, the people closest to me, like family members, are like, Mike, you got to relax. Like, you're pushing too hard. Clearly, you're working too much. You got to settle down. Is it worth it? All these things. And they say that because they love me and they care, but they don't understand this information. And then you, on the other hand, were like, you've got this. You've just got to push through, because this is where most people retreat. This is your subconscious last ditch effort to pull you back to that comfort zone of, hey, this is the old Mike. What are we doing way up here? This is scary. We don't need this. Come back here. We were comfortable here before. What are we doing?
Yeah, it's not so bad, right?
Exactly. But you need that person in your corner that's going to hold you accountable and support, encourage, and challenge you to keep pushing, because you said this is what you wanted. You're sure if this is what you want, then you're going to break through that fear and you're going to do it.
Yeah, you'll create a new paradigm, because in time your desires will become your paradigm. So when people set goals, people are setting goals totally wrong. You see, generally when a person sets the goal, it's the furthest out they've ever thought. So if you imagine your goal like you're standing on the edge of a cliff. So if that's the line, the goal is like the finish line, the perceived finish line, then you're on the edge of the cliff. Well, what happens when you're on the edge? You get scared. You see, what you have to do is we have to learn to, when we set a goal, that's all that's acceptable. This is the new life. That's actually the bottom. The goal is not the furthest you're going to go. The goal is actually the bottom. It is all you're going to accept. The goal is actually just the starting point. And if we can start to do that, because it's the subconscious mind that pumps the fear into us, if we can start to make that shift, you can turn that into power. You have to aggressively attack this belief system. You have to aggressively start to change how you make decisions.
100%.
I would love, Dave, for you to talk about something that has been big for me to realize since we started working together. And that is, whenever I used to get deals or things going on, right, I would get very excited. And then they would, a couple of days after, they would fall apart. And I came on a call and I looked at you and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. Because I understand that I'm attracting them into my life. I get excited about them and then they fall apart. But without reason, rhyme, justification, it's just all kinds of weird things happen and they fall apart. And you told me, yeah, it's because you get excited. You have to stop getting excited, which is an interesting concept. And you have a very interesting way of explaining why we shouldn't get excited. So can you tell people like why they shouldn't get too excited and what that tells their subconscious when they do get too excited, what they're actually telling themselves?
It's actually the other way around. It's actually your subconscious mind telling you something. So when we get excited, like when we win, let's say we win the lotto today, we'll be like, oh my God, like we won the lotto. It's just unreal. Or I don't know if you remember as a young boy and you were at the school dances, like how brutal was that for the guys, ladies, ease up on the men. We got to stand there. We got to walk across. We gotta walk. We also got to propose. I remember I barely slept for like 3 days before I had to propose to my wife. It's terrifying. So what it is actually the sub telling us something. When we get excited, that's telling us there's a part of us that didn't believe it would happen. It's also a part of us that says you're not worth that. So we get excited. Now, excitement and fear are very hard emotions to control. Excitement and fear, they're actually the same thing. One's on the positive side and one's on the negative. So one's suppressive, one's expressive. But when you start to look at those two states, you'll find that they're both very difficult to control. What we want to start to develop is a healthy, expectant attitude with controlled enthusiasm. Does this mean, Dave, you have to just be like a freaking lump on a log and just be a boring ass person? No, but you need to have controlled enthusiasm, controlled expectancy. So when we get excited, it's like win the lottos because there's a party that didn't believe that you were worth it. If that part doesn't alter, you will attract, so that thing leaves your life. Let's say you have a man that, like, I don't know, he attracts the girl of his dreams or something. And he's so excited. She's out of his league. When they start dating, he's going to start to get possessive. He can start getting jealous. He can start getting fearful. And the excitement is flipped from excitement into fear. You'll find also when you get excitement, you start having fear that you can lose it. And this is a bad habit for people in real estate. It's a bad habit for anything, but especially people in real estate. You can't have fear. You have to eliminate fear. If you're afraid that things aren't going to work out, you're afraid you're going to lose your property, you're afraid it's not going to rent, you're pumping vibrations into it that will move into form.
And it sounds hypothetically like, oh yeah, not very easy to do. However, I think one of the differences, I will pat myself on the back here, is I am one of the few people that has consistently stayed in this material. And I know if I had not, I've been through some really great ups. I've also had some really low downs over the years, and you've helped me through that. Most people, what I've noticed, and I felt this tendency, and you called me out on it at the beginning, is it's easy to get around good people and around your coaches and mentors when things are going well. But when you're down in the dumps, people tend to want to isolate for whatever reason, right? Because I don't know, whether I don't think it's a competitive thing, but you don't want to show that things aren't going that well. Those are the times that you need those people the most, because it's easy when things are going good, but can you stay in this material? Can you use these principles to turn things around when they're not going well? To me, that's the real superpower. Otherwise, you get sucked in this vortex of just this downward spiral. And if you can't snap out of it, that's when you crash and burn. Because what's the whole point? If you build this empire and this dream life that you want, but if you're easily rocked or you don't know how to pull yourself out of a rut, that's when you're going to get into trouble.
Yeah, I remember there's a gentleman back that I met at your mastermind a month or two ago. And you guys will probably remember this guy. And he was there and he didn't want to come. And I see it all the time. And he starts to isolate, starts missing calls, stops sharing. This is all anxiety. It can be fear of criticism. It can be like, well, I'm not producing like how maybe Timmy and Lucy are producing, so my opinion is worthless. And we stop sharing. We stop being willing, and we stop being vulnerable. And when people don't know what's going on with you, they can't help you. And then if you start 100%, and a lot of people go through this.
Yeah, can you talk more about fear? Like, what are some of the if there's different kinds of fears, what are some of the elements, and what are some of the things that people can maybe help themselves? Because I think by now, if you're into personal development for any length of time, one of the very first gifts that personal development gave me, at least, was awareness. And without awareness, you can't do anything, right? So I think some people now, if you've been in some kind of personal development for long enough, you realize that you're going through your kind of cycles, right? And you have the awareness of like, I am in fear right now. Now what? What do I do now? Like, I know I'm scared. Great.
Okay.
Now what, Dave? What,
All right.
what do I do next?
This is a fantastic question. So there's primary fears. The primary fear, I think there's two big daddies, two big mamas of the fear world. The first is the fear of poverty, and the second is the fear of criticism. There's the fear of ill health. These are serious fears, but they're not as big as the big daddies. So you got the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, the fear of loss of liberty, the fear of death, and the fear of old age. Now, if we take let's take the pandemic. I'm just going to give a neutral objective viewpoint of it. So when the pandemic started, there was fear of loss of love was a huge motivator for people because they were worried about their family members. They're worried about themselves, their parents. So there's the fear of loss of love and then the fear of ill health. So like the fear of getting sick. So there was some people in the population that appeared to be more vulnerable than others, and people had fear around that. Well, after a while, when they went into the lockdown, then it moved into the fear of poverty. So then people start losing their businesses, right? Then what are we going to do about money? So then Trump had to put the package together and started sending people the money. Well, after that fear, then they rolled out the vaccines. Then the fear criticism started. And you had families fighting with each other, and you had people political on each end of the spectrum, and all these fears. Like if you look at it, I think COVID is a great showcase of how fear moves and changes. And these fears, they're serious. So how do I know I'm in a state of fear? Well, you are in indecision. So what the listeners can start to do is take a pen and paper and say, where in my life right now am I in indecision? If you're in indecision, you're going to find that you have a fear. There is a fear at the back of that indecision. You are afraid to lose something. But however, this is even crazier. Behind every fear is selfishness. Selfishness is the breeding ground for all forms of fear, vices, and sin. It's selfishness. So when you see a fearful person, you actually see a selfish person. Now they'll be like, well, I have a family, Dave. I can't go and buy this property because I'm afraid. Well, okay, fine. So you have the fear of loss of love. You have the fear of poverty. So instead of like, what does your family need? What does your kids need? What does the world need? Do your family kids need you to play small today? Like who benefits by you playing small? Or does your family need you to be courageous? Does your family need you to be ambitious? Does your family need you to grow stronger? And the answer is so obvious. We do not need any more wimps in the world. We really don't. We need more courageous people. We need way more people that actually know how to think. Way more. We don't need anybody playing it safe. We have billions of those.
And I think that you say all the time that I love is the universe does not share its secrets with wimps.
The universe will not share her secrets with a wimp. Think about it. Do you want a wimp representing you?
And that's the thing that people don't understand is the more of this work that you do, you literally start hearing the universe more and more. And you start realizing that the universe is just looking for people to listen, to serve the ideas that the universe has to give you. And so many times people are like, give me a sign. And the universe is like, here it is. And people are like, no, this, something else. And the universe is like, no, that is your test. Do it. You're like, no, I don't want to do that. Right. And you tell us all the time, it's like your sub. It's so interesting because it's like these things come and it recognizes it and it realizes it. And then it's like, oh man, completely gets rid of it. And it's like, I almost changed. Right. This idea was coming in and almost changed me. It's like, oh my goodness, like I almost let this idea change my life. Imagine what would have happened. Right. And then that keeps happening more and more. The last thing that I want us to touch on, because I know it's something that I have had to work a lot with, is the concept of guilt. I think it's innate in most immigrant children, the idea of guilt. And one of the ideas of guilt that there is probably different shapes and shades of guilt as well, right? But one of the guilts that you and I have talked about in the past that I think is common to immigrant children is the guilt of having to live for other people, or the guilt of like, oh, what would the family think, right? And so many people live their life not doing what they want to do because they have this responsibility and feeling of a burden that they have to live for others. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. There's three main blockers of our growth: fear, money, and guilt. Fear rots you from the inside out. Okay. So when you go to make a decision, 'cause it's all about how you're making your decisions. So when I first started getting mentored by Bob Proctor, he told me to start to read a chapter out of Think and Rich called Decision. And I ended up reading that for 18 months. And at the end of the 18 months, I realized that I was terrible at making decisions. It took me 18 months to realize it. So I ended up hiring a guy. I paid him $35,000 to talk with me for 2 hours, tell me to do one thing and one thing only to help me change the way I make decisions. Now, if I go back in time to like Dave Conway 2017 and an angel came in to me and was like, okay, hey, Dave, and like in about 2.5 years from now, you're going to give a guy $35,000 to be with you for 2 hours. I'd say, okay, no chance in hell. Like, no way am I going to do that. But I did. Now, why would I do something like that? Because I realized the power of decision. If that guy would have told me 100,000, I would have done it. At the end of those 2 hours, I'm going to give your audience what I paid $35,000 for. And you might even think, well, why the hell did he pay that much for that? Well, it's changed my whole life. At the end of those 2 hours, he said, you make decisions based on one thing and one thing only. Do you want it? Never make decisions on, can you afford it? Never look at your outside world. Can I do it? Am I good enough? Never make a decision based on that. You only make decisions based on what you want. So when these emotions kick in, it's always at the moment of decision. And this is where most people, they crumple. I've seen people make it right to the finish line, right to that point, right to the climax, and they don't push through. I helped Mike with this. I've been helping Mike with this for the last few years. And the only time the guy ever reaches out to me is when he's getting pulled by the paradigm to stay where he is. Like, that's all we really work on together is like those really fragile moments when we're sensitive, when we're vulnerable, when the paradigm is like really like trying to really, it's throwing everything at you and is trying to get you to stop. So it's fear number one crops up when we make a decision. Now, what fear does is once we take the idea and it goes in, fear eats us from the inside out. The second thing that blocks people from making decisions is money. This is where they look from the outside. They say, do I have enough? Can I afford it? Will it work? And generally, most of your goals, your current level does not match the BHAG. What you have right now is not supported by your outside world. So what people do is they reduce their goals to match the outside world. That is a huge mistake. You want to force the outside world to conform to your goals. So money gets people at the decision moment because they don't understand they deal with an infinite supply. You know, the saddest thing that I have seen in my life is that we know so little about ourselves. We know very, very little about what we're working with when we have a mind. And the third is guilt. Now, what guilt does at that moment of decision, the acceptance of an idea, the acceptance of growth, at that moment of decision, what it does is it'll take the outside world. So it'll even take the love of a spouse, of a parent, of a child, and it'll take it in and it'll say, you can't grow because of this, because then things are going to change. So it takes the most beautiful gift that we have, which is the capacity to love, and it inverts it, and it turns it into a rotten apple, and it uses that feeling to say, no, these people are better off if you stay put. It's sinister. Guilt is rank. It's rank emotion. My wife and I, Jacqueline, we made a decision a few years ago that we live in a guilt-free home. Guilt is not accepted in our home. I have two beautiful daughters, Abigail and Lily, and this guilt stuff's serious. It's programmed in. Like, I saw Abby at 3 years old feeling guilty. And I said, where the hell did this come from? We have been getting rid of it. Like, this is a guilt-free home. Once we catch it, we say, no, get out of that emotion. You never need to feel guilty. You never need to feel guilty. Toxic, corrosive.
I love that.
There's so many more things that I want to cover, but I want to be respectful of your time here. So first off, thank you for coming on here. Thank you for working with me the last few years. And I'll echo E for working with him more recently.
And for being so annoying about it. Like, I think that's another thing that it's important. No, but it's true. Like, I think it's important for you guys to understand as you're looking for a mentor. You want somebody that you like and you can enjoy having a dinner with, but you also want somebody that challenges and pushes you, and it's different than what you used to. Because if not, you're gonna continue to get the same thing that you always got it. And what's funny is I can tell a story about how my paradigm showed up when I first met Dave, and like I'm like, love this guy, everything he's saying is great. I should work with him. We sit down for dinner, and he says this off-color thing about a dog. And as you guys know from listening to us for a long time, I love dogs. And I hear this, and my paradigm, my subconscious was trying desperately to find something that would say, this is not the guy for you. This is not the man for you, right? And that happened, and my sub was like, perfect. Here's the proof that we needed, right? And then I shut off completely. And then I came home. I was doing the readings. I was reading things, and then Dave's kept coming into my mind. And you need a mentor. You need a coach. You need somebody that makes you uncomfortable. Has to be that person that in the gym is that coach is always like, one more. When you've done already 12 more, you're like, okay, either this guy doesn't know how to count, or like, I don't know what's happening, right? But it's like, one more. And you're like, Dave, please stop. And you're like, no, one more. And it's important. And I appreciate it.
Imagine not changing your life over somebody's views on pets. Good grief.
But yeah, like, can you imagine? Like, it's real and it's serious. But so many people do that, right? So many people are like, this guy's wearing a red hat, and you're like, I can't listen to him. This guy's doing this. This guy's driving a Tesla, or driving a truck, and there's all these things that you use to limit yourself. And I appreciate how unapologetically you do it, and I see it as your way of loving on all of us in terms of like reaching our full potential. Is you being just hard on us.
Yeah, you got to learn to be direct, honest, and loving, all wrapped into one. And people have said to me, like, when Bob was alive and he was mentoring me, people say, "Oh, you're so lucky to, have gotten mentored by him like that." And I say, "Not really, man. It was terrible. It was a massacre." I used to come to it with excuses. I used to try and say why there was this, my life was this way. And, he'd say, no, it's you, it's your paradigm, it's you. I remember one time we were out for dinner, and we were at one of those like Brazilian steakhouses. And I had my food on my plate, and he was standing beside me on the left. And he looked down at my plate and he said, "Oh, are you hungry or what?" In other words, saying, too much food on your plate. Like, you would just say this stuff to me. You're very abusive. You're if you have a suspicion that you're in an abusive relationship with your mentor, you probably have the right mentor. I hate my personal trainer, by the way. He's so annoying. I hate him,
But that's how you know they're good.
but I love him. Yeah, he stays on my butt.
So for the listeners out there, where can they connect with you and everything that Conway Consulting has going on?
Yeah, come hang out on Instagram. I think that's the most, fluid place. So Conway Consulting on Instagram is the handle, at Conway Consulting, and come check it out. There's a 21-day challenge on there, 21-day manifestation challenge. And what it's designed to do is to help people, number one, improve their ability to create clear mental pictures. And number two is focus. Focus is everything. Focus is the separator. You got to learn how to focus. So come and check it out. Come hit a follow on Instagram, and we can start to hang out there. It'd be fantastic.
Love it. So the last question that we ask all of our guests is, what is your number one secret to success?
That's a great question. It's a two-parter. Don't do anything if you're not operating the clear mental picture. Okay? Once you build a clear mental picture, so if you set a goal, build an image of something that would represent that goal being completed or fulfilled. Once you build that image, takes about an hour to build a really solid one, time well spent. Then you just keep focusing on that all the time. Bring it into your mind as much as humanly possible. Don't live through your five senses. Focus on that one clear mental picture. Earl Nightingale said it best. He said, "You are now and you will become what you think about." You are now and you will become what you think about. Change your thinking, change your life.
Love it. Well, Dave, thank you again for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. For the listeners out there, you're probably going to want to rewind and listen to this one a few times and take some notes, and then maybe question your beliefs. Maybe question what ideas have you been accepting, especially if you feel any resistance to what Dave talked about today. It's probably a good area to explore a little bit and think about it. So that's it for this week, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have an amazing week. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.